I be scraping the deodorant off my girl's armpit with my teeth like filling out of an Oreo. Hi Carter, we at Oreo love this tweet. Can we have your permission to use it on our socials? That tweet? Yes, so good. Do we have your permission? If so, please reply OREOK. Lol, OREOK. Thanks Carter, you have forfeited all ownership and rights to this tweet to Oreo and Mondelez International. Have a good day. Look this up. From what I can tell, this is either fake or the post has since been deleted by Oreo. You really think someone would just go online and impersonate a brand? Tumblr user Tetris Official? About 6 years ago, I was in the hospital with awful pain. I was asked where it hit on the 0 to 10 scale, and I said a 9, because I was told 10 is the worst pain you can imagine. I have a pretty vivid imagination. I was in the worst pain of my life, but I imagined that having my limbs torn off by a gator would probably hurt more, so I said 9. Turned out I had 6 simultaneous kidney stones. As anyone who's ever had one can tell you, even a single kidney stone is monumentally painful. Famously so. I had 6 at once, 4 in one kidney and 2 in the other. When the doctor figured out what was wrong with me, he was floored that I hadn't said 10, floored that I wasn't screaming. I told him about my imagination. He asked if I had chronic pain. I told him yeah, and that the reason I waited almost 10 hours to come to the hospital when I started was because it felt like period cramps. Is it just me, or did our generation, those of us who are currently 20 to 30-ish, just not get the opportunity to be young in the standard sense? Like, everyone I talk to who's over 40 has all their wild stories about their teens and 20s, being young and dumb, and then I talk to my friends and coworkers and classmates, and we just don't. My mom tells stories of skipping school to sneak across the border and spend the day at a bar in Mexico. I was threatened with not being able to graduate because of senior ditch day. One of my friends had to go to his first hour class on senior ditch day because the teacher, who almost exclusively taught seniors, arranged a huge exam that day with no available makeup days, specifically to punish kids who took part in ditch day. Our wild and crazy ditch day was playing mini golf and then stopping for ice cream on our way back to one of our friends' houses to play Cards Against Humanity. If anyone is wondering where we are on a scale of 1 to frigged, Weird Al Yankovic just did a full cover of Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name. In this man's 46-year-long career, through everything, he has never spoken about politics. He has never spoken harshly to anyone. He has never performed songs with heavy swearing or forceful lyrics. This man guest starred on My Little Pony as Cheese Sandwich. The only other party pony as fun as Pinkie Pie. When this man stops laughing, we are in trouble. This is why I struggle to fully convey to Americans just how bad they have it. The whole concept of sick days is idolatrous capitalism. When we started work in the Netherlands, we asked HR how many sick days we get. After a brief confused look, the reply, all of them. When you're sick, you stay home. When you're well, you work. Dutch law translated reads, if you own a company in the Netherlands and one of your employees becomes ill, you must go on paying them for a maximum of 2 years. Correction, it's a minimum of 2 years. Generally, it's 100% of your wage in the first year, 70% in the second. When I came out as trans, I had an old friend from my church days message me to congratulate me and ask me for my name and pronouns, and I was shocked, to be honest, because he was such a head deep up the church's butt kind of guy, so I was super wary. And after digging a little deeper, I found out that he was very supportive of transness, saying that trans men are men and trans women are women. But he also believed in the church's gender roles, meaning that trans women had to marry men and be submissive wives, and trans men had to marry women and be strong Christian husbands, which is like, huh? The weirdest and most surreal form of trans-inclusive misogyny I've ever seen. I remember one time I got insanely zooted while playing Among Us, and it quickly became apparent to the other players online. I forget how, honestly, but literally anything sus I did was ignored by everyone because I was so friggin' zooted. I tested this theory by standing in front of a body, and the person that actually reported it didn't even mention me. The funniest part was when I was trying to do wires. I kept frigging up over and over again, so I was just standing in front of wires for actual minutes trying to figure it out. A small crowd of players gathered around me to watch and would get mad every time someone reported a body or emergency meeting because she's never gonna get her task done if you keep interrupting them. I don't think anyone cared about winning at that point. They just wanted to see the zooted crewmate succeed in her tasks. I think the idea of a shady dwarven salesman selling cheap stuff to humans and laughing to himself like, it only lasts 1 generation, those stupid idiots. How will they even pass it down to their kids? Forgetting that 1 dwarf generation is like 4 human ones is funny. Elf Aeonasir selling mithril armor that will last no more than 1,000 years, getting death threats from his fellow elves, but doing numbers with humans. Actually, I really like this idea is why elven and dwarven crafts are so good. Something that's merely acceptable is meant to last most of one of their lifetimes, so even a mediocre dwarven craftsman will make something a human can pass down. Goku in the depths of Guilty Gear's code holding it together. To actually explain what's happening, in Fighter Z, one of the Gokus, SSJ Likely, is the only Frigger who has all the code for things like moving, jumping, and all that. Every other character just has shortcuts that say, check what it says for Goku and do it like that. When the devs moved on to their next game, Guilty Gear Strive, Daisuke's wisdom built it on the same engine as DBFZ. Rather than redoing all that basic stuff again, they took a shortcut and just added Goku to Guilty Gear's code so they can keep using the same shortcut that they used for DBFZ. Every time you press a button in either game, the character goes and asks Goku what to do. If they couldn't find Goku, the game go boom. Please read the story of a man accidentally discovering his wife is the world's best Tetris player. The husband was writing an article on classic video game records, was surprised to find out that holding the Tetris record is a bit of a big deal, and mentions how good his wife is at it. The guy he's talking to mentions that the record is 327, way lower than his wife's usual scores of 500 to 600. They travel to a tournament, and she goes to do her attempt. Just after she beats 327 and is climbing higher, a judge brings up to the husband that the specific version she's playing actually has a different record of 545. She overhears that she needs to beat 500 something and keeps going, setting the record at 841. My chronic pain doctor suggested I exercise more. I asked him how. He looked confused, said I should try a bit every day. I said, not when, how? I asked what exercises I should do. He suggested half a dozen options that had all been explicitly banned by other doctors. I'm not allowed to run, I'm not allowed to bike, I'm not allowed to use my rowing machine or my punching bag. I walk my dog whenever I have the energy and when it doesn't hurt too much. What else can I do? He told me I should exercise more, and then he changed the subject. So apparently people with epilepsy can learn to sense when they have a seizure coming. I wonder if you could use that as a plot device thing in a story somewhere. Like there's some big great public council meeting about some important political issue, Roman Senate style, and there's two opposing sides about the issue, but also a big chunk of undecided people who could be persuaded to vote either way. And there's someone in attendance who hasn't spoken out loud about the issue anywhere, but sides strongly with one of the options. And just when the dispute is about to swing to the wrong direction, they sense a seizure about to happen, and it's too late for them to try to get out of there or really even warn anyone. So instead, they just stand up, boldly announce, I, for one, am sure that option they do not want cannot fail. If I am wrong, let the gods smite me right where I stand. And then the friggin' seizure hits. You know these friggers banning books don't read crap. Genuinely, one of the measures that stop book banning the most when districts implement it is having the would-be banners fill out a form that demonstrates if they've read the book or not, like where they have to summarize the plot and characters into a mini book report and give a review. It stops them in their tracks. This is why in my high school, every time someone wanted to ban a book, it ended up going nowhere. There was one where a conservative student wanted to ban a manga for having a Zaza leaf on the cover, then got the form that required them to actually read and either balked or read it and realized it was not illegal substance at all. The problem, you're Michael Bublé, it's 2011 and you'd like to make a Christmas album. Your producers want you to sing the classic Christmas song Santa Baby, but if you sing it as intended, it's gonna come off as like super gay. The proposed solution, you'll rewrite the lyrics to the song to imply a platonic friendship between yourself and the man in red, making Santa a real bro who's gonna help you get some with the honeys, with cool masculine gifts like a steel blue convertible, a yacht, and tickets to a Canadian hockey game. The reality, the combination of the lewdness of your voice and the inherently coital vibes of the song means you create a story about a closeted gay guy desperately repressing his desire to, as the kids say, frig that old man. No bromoing your way through asking him to trim your tree, promising you'll be such a good boy if he treats you well, and begging him to slide down your chimney. So, if you're not in a tech bro adjacent world, you might not know this, but a lot of gamer bros have finally started rebelling against AI, because they were all waiting for Black Friday sales to get new PC parts, but AI companies are buying up all the PC parts. So they all logged in on Black Friday looking for deals, and found everything 3 times as expensive as it was a few months ago. And I mean everything. It's not just GPUs this time like it was with the crypto miners. It's RAM and SSDs and even friggin' HDDs. You tell a gamer bro he can't get a 1TB SSD for less than 200 smackaroos, and he'll be against anything you tell him is to blame. Rocket scientists who leave the rocket industry keep thinking everything is a rocket, and it's kind of adorable. We can honeycomb this to reduce the weight. Sweetie, no. That's going to be twice as expensive to manufacture, and we're not launching it anywhere. If we use titanium instead of steel, we'll save a bunch of weight. Baby, you need to stop worrying so much about your weight, and maybe worry more about what happens to titanium when you expose it to deuterium plasma. Meringue is what happens when rocket scientists are asked to bake a cake. We could cut the flour entirely. Just sugar, egg, and air. We don't even need the whole egg. Sometimes I think about how I wrote a paper 2 weeks late in 7th grade and slipped it under my teacher's desk after putting a footprint on it, and she apologized for losing my paper and giving me a 0 and corrected my grade to a B+, and digital submission has just ruined the magic. I met a girl who did a very good half of exam, but didn't actually know the answer, so she wrote a full page, 2 sides, left half a sentence at the end of the page, and wrote page 1 of 2 and submitted that. Because the teacher assumed it was her fault and that she had lost half of the exam, she gave her a passing grade hoping she wouldn't complain, and she didn't, of course. How device hoarding by Americans is costing economy. Americans are holding onto devices longer than ever before, and while it may be consumer smart, it comes at a cost to work productivity. No, CNBC, it's not device hoarding, it's my phone still works fine, and I'm not going to spend $1,500 for a slightly better camera and an AI feature that I'll eventually disable. Their only source for holding onto devices longer than ever before is seemingly this. The average American now holds onto their smartphone for 29 months, according to a recent survey by reviews.org, and that cycle is getting longer. The average was around 22 months in 2016. I go to YouTube. Cute animal videos are AI now. I go to Instagram. There are AI influencers. I go to Spotify. It's flooded with AI bands and music. I go to eBay. Every product is AI. I open Netflix. Every movie has AI. I watch TV. All commercials are AI. I cancel all my subscriptions. The customer support is AI. I buy a book. It's written by AI. I talk to my friends. They tell me that AI is their new therapist. I take the subway. Some dude is talking to his AI girlfriend next to me. I go to the beach. The sunset is real. I take a pic and upload it. The photo is enhanced with AI. You can't opt out. Computer, what gift do I buy for a dad who has about as many worldly desires as a Buddhist monk? Here's my gift buying advice. It never steers me wrong. I got it from an episode of News Radio where Andy Richard buys Bill Gates a ball of twine. If you have someone to buy a gift for who doesn't need anything and hasn't asked for anything, buy them something they haven't thought of themselves, won't buy for themselves, but have a pre-existing use case for. You'll look like a genius and get lots and lots of thank yous. Keep it small and inexpensive and easy to throw away, /store/hide in case they politely do not like it. That's my method, and it has never failed me since I've started doing it. Our landlord has started ominously talking about doing property valuations for our flat, so we've decided to make some mortgage appointments to see if we actually have any reasonable chance of buying something if we get kicked out. Stressful, hassle, yada yada, but the point is, I'm filling out this mortgage website's form with our details, and it asks for your occupation via a drop-down menu. Unsurprisingly, learning technologist, aka my job, is not listed as one of their occupations. Weirdly, neither is IT support, which was the next closest position I could think of, but whatever, still not too unusual. But then I started scrolling down the list of what this website does have for accepted occupations, and now I have some questions about how they establish what jobs need to be included as options. While I'm on the subject, a lot of people may not know how to pluralize the word Cree, which is my tribe. So traditionally we add an E for every person. So Crees technically refers to 2 people. Crees would be a group of 3. Crees would be 6, etc. Makes it easy to tell how many people are being talked about. You would think that a single Cree would be Cre, but we add the second E to make it easy to pronounce in English. You have to add a minimum of 50,000 E's if you're referring to every Cree on Earth as a whole. That doesn't sound right, but I don't know enough about Cree. So I have COVID right now, and I must say, American cold medicine is the absolute bee's knees. You go to a UK pharmacy, and they tenderly press like 8 paracetamol into the palm of your hand. God forbid you're sick in France. I had to scour every pharmacy in Paris for something that wasn't homeopathic pastilles. Meanwhile, last night I took the last of my stash of NyQuil that expired in 2019, and it was like getting hit by a friggin' baseball bat. Affectionate. Press X to time skip. Love me a cheeky little medically induced coma. You can really feel that it's a precursor to crystal. More dog owners are questioning vaccines like rabies after COVID. Fun fact, if your dog is unvaccinated and bites someone, in most states, it's not only perfectly legal, but suggested course of action for animal control to seize your dog, euthanize it, and cut its head off for rabies testing. This process costs $300 to $500 USD and is the responsibility of the owner to pay. Rabies is one of the most lethal diseases in the world. If you get bitten by a rabid dog, or even slobbered on by a rabid dog, and happen to have an open wound, and don't get medical treatment until you develop symptoms, congratulations, you're dead. Vaccinate your friggin' pets. 5th person confirmed to be cured of HIV. Researchers are announcing that a 53-year-old man in Germany has been cured of HIV. Referred to as the Dusseldorf patient to protect his privacy, researchers said he is the 5th confirmed case of an HIV cure. Although the details of his successful treatment were first announced at the conference in 2019, researchers could not confirm he had been officially cured at that time. Today, researchers announced the Dusseldorf patient still has no detectable virus in his body, even after stopping his HIV medication 4 years ago. I read an article about Costco back in 2008. The owner was approached by a business consultant with a plan that could make him $1 million a year, personally. The plan would have had the owner fire 20% of his work staff, cut benefits, and start new employees at minimum wage. After reading the proposal, the owner said, "You're fired. I make $350,000 a year. I have 2 houses, 2 cars, 2 kids in college, a boat, and an RV. No one needs to make $1 million a year at the expense of your employees. If there was a Costco near me, I'd be there weekly just to support such an honest company." I think Joan of Arc's persona would be a dog called Joan of Bark, but my partner thinks it would be a phoenix, which seems insensitive to me, but neither of us are furries, so I guess we don't really get a say either way. I promise I'm not trying to be pretentious here. Jeanne d'Arc's last name is d'Arc. An overly literal translator insisted it stood for of Arc, and that's why we know her as Joan of Arc. At the time, she was more commonly known as Jeanne la Pucelle, meaning Joan the Maiden or Joan the Pure. Anyways, since her main attack strategy was hit them until they stopped moving, I think she'd be a gorilla. Every single conversation I'm forced into on this website is either guac is extra or you hate pancakes. Me, steak burrito with guacamole, I know it's extra. Lady, chicken or steak? Me, steak. Lady, you want guacamole? Me, yes. Lady, that's extra. Me, okay. Twitter's the only place where well-articulated sentences will still get misinterpreted. You can say, "I like pancakes," and somebody will say, "So you hate waffles?" No, hag, that's a whole new sentence. What the frig is you talking about? I forget baby bugs don't really exist. Not in the way I want them to anyways. I was like, how come I've never seen a baby beetle? I bet they're so cute. And then I Googled and I was like, oh right, grub. Grasshopper nymph. Bugs with complete metamorphosis, beetles, butterflies, antlions, wasps, typically have grubs, while bugs with incomplete metamorphosis have baby bugs. Examples include, but aren't limited to, mantises, crickets, roaches, stink bugs, stick bugs, and tree hoppers. Most non-insect arthropods also have a baby stage, such as centipedes, spiders, lobsters, and isopods. I used to get really bad nosebleeds, but sometimes could feel when they were starting. One day in middle school, this guy in geography class wouldn't shut the frig up about that conspiracy theory that Delaware doesn't exist. So when I felt one coming on, I loudly interrupted the rant our teacher was inexplicably allowing to derail the class by saying, "If you don't stop, I'm gonna have an aneurysm." The guy, of course, just kept going. So a second later, a small torrent of blood gushed out of my head, and, being a dramatic hag, I collapsed face down onto my desk into a nice little puddle of blood. Anyway, apparently, these stunts apparently induce panic attacks in educators and end up with you getting lectured about how traumatizing it is for your classmates when you fake your death for dramatic effect. Simply cannot ever resist what I call the Little Mermaid, or the Tin Man, or the Pinocchio plot. The one about a character who's either inhuman or human, but outside in some way, constantly searching for whatever it is that they consider to be the quintessential proof of humanity, preoccupied by it so deeply that they fail to realize the proof is in the act and the fact of the search itself. I'm reminded very much of the joke about the robber and the poor man, where the poor man wakes up and finds someone robbing his house and asks what they're looking for, and the robber says money, and the poor man says, maybe if we both look together we can find some. A human asks a robot or a wooden boy or a ghost or a mermaid what they're looking for, and the inhuman person says that they're searching for a way to be human, and the human says, let's search together. Maybe we'll find it if we both look. Remember that short story they made you read in school called The Lottery, where the whole town gets together and just stones a motherfrigger at random? What the frig was up with that? When The Lottery by Shirley Jackson was first published, tons of people wrote into the newspaper that published it to demand to know what the hell it was meant to be about. I hoped, by setting a particularly brutal ancient rite in the present and in my own village, to shock the story's readers with a graphic dramatization of the pointless violence and general inhumanity in their own lives. So basically, the story is written in such a way that the uncritical nature of the townspeople is highlighted when it comes to their own traditions. Every year, the town commits outright violent murder, but because it's normal to them, they don't think of it in those terms. The reader, who isn't part of the town's cultural assumptions, sees the horrific nature of their actions, but the characters in the story don't. There was a decent but ultimately forgettable fantasy novel I read a long time ago that had a single moment that stuck with me. The protagonist has just won the world-famous sword fighting competition in the big rich capital and is talking to his mentor and says something about being the best swordsman in the world. The mentor frowns and tells him that no, he isn't. He's the best swordsman out of the people that could afford to show up to this tournament. There could be a mercenary way out in the mountains, patrolling a snow-encrusted fort's walls that could kick his butt, and there was no way to know until he was already losing to the guy. I think about that a lot, and how for every apparently dominant competitor, there might be a friggin' Ronin out there somewhere capable of destroying them. It's wild how tech literacy lasted like one generation barely before it fell off. The tech industry saw to it, in a drive to both expand their market by making it easier to pick up tech without knowing how it works, and in an effort to lock down controllable walled gardens and ecosystems they could fully control and exploit. Tech has continuously and systematically destroyed both the need for tech literacy and the avenues for developing it independently. You are not supposed to know how your devices work. You are not supposed to modify them without paying a service fee. You are not supposed to add functionality to them unless they sell it to you. And you are definitely not supposed to repair or reuse them when they could make you replace them at full price. Yanked from slumber by a dream wherein the corporate solution to the people yearn for fresh butter was let's bioengineer a miniature cow that people can keep in the refrigerator's butter cubicle where it will regularly poop out fresh butter, huh? Of course that's not how cows work at all. So instead, they mutated a sea slug until it was black and white and vaguely cow-shaped, self-regenerating and creamy and delicious. Then they pre-sliced that frigger, still alive, and sold it as this season's can't friggin' believe it's not butter. All of which I found out in the dream when I walked into a grocery store dairy aisle and was faced with row upon row of squirming, writhing, silently screaming supine slug cows mooing in slug agony. Insane how people think I can just do things. Can you mail me this and get killed by the post office desk workers? Go Postal. From go to become plus postal, relating to the collection, sorting, and delivery of mail from a number of incidents, mostly gun violence, perpetrated by disgruntled US Postal Service workers on co-workers in the United States in the mid-1980s. I'm Brazilian and this was in no way a reference to that. I had no idea this was a thing. Sorry. Wait, OP, what were you actually originally referring to? Post office scary. Like, literally, if I didn't want to see some weird nonsense, I wouldn't be consuming sci-fi. Oh, this episode is about meeting a bunch of dinosaurs who developed space travel and left Earth to go live on the other side of the galaxy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that silly? Sure, yeah, maybe a little, but by focusing on that, you're missing the narrative reason for it, which is to provide a starting point to explore religious authoritarianism and the production of scientific knowledge. Just a spoonful of nonsense helps the critical thinking about uncomfortable social and structural problems that are such a fundamental part of the background radiation of our lives that we can't see them go down. I'm glad that my extended family seems to be vaguely aware that I'm non-binary, but it makes Christmas funny because most of my aunts have a very simple formula of the girls get perfume and the boys get cologne, and they seem to have realized they can't really do that for me, but haven't come up with a consistent generalist solution yet, so each year is a delightful surprise. Plain unbranded soap, those gloves with touchscreen finger pads. One year I got 2 different puzzle books. It's a fascinating look into the minds of cis people and I appreciate it so much. Basically how I imagine the thought process, and honestly, they're not wrong. Sometimes I have what I call new towel blindness, which is basically where I forget I'm an adult with adult money that I can exchange for goods and services I would like say new towels. Instead of continuing to use my grandparents' hand-me-down towels, they gave me when they downsized and I was in college. And it's definitely one of those things exacerbated by growing up poor and then being a super poor 20-something, but I think it's something many of us fall into. Anyway, today I bought a bra that doesn't cause my chest physical pain, a person my style, instead of continuing to use the poorly sized not my style purse I'd been gifted, and joined a gym, because I remembered I can just give someone money in exchange for them teaching me how to lift weights, instead of thinking, gosh, strength training would be good to do as my body ages. I wish I knew how. I love how whenever Avatar: The Last Airbender recognizes Sokka is smart enough to solve a problem, but it'd be too fast, they just stick him in some kind of situation. Like he could have stopped Jet from drowning a town, so they tied him up and dumped him in a forest. He could have figured out what the spirit's deal was, so they lost him in the spirit world for 24 hours. One time, they just stuck him in a hole in the ground for a whole episode. This is how writers should deal with characters who are too smart for the arc, instead of making them suddenly dumber for no apparent reason. If you frequently find yourself in random situations while your friends happen to be experiencing problems, maybe you too are too smart for the narrative. The very best thing about the Phantom of the Opera is that it shows us a possibly supernatural occurrence, then gives us a natural explanation that is infinitely crazier than the supernatural one would have been. What if there was a ghost in the opera house that was killing people? Requires you to accept the existence of ghosts, but otherwise is a straightforward story. What if the chief contractor who built the opera house was a deformed circus freak who used his experience building palaces and torture chambers for sultans to keep building secret passageways and torture chambers in the basement when construction halted during the Franco-Prussian War, and then kept living down there working on an opera and killing and blackmailing people who crossed him, and also training a pretty opera singer that he wants to marry? There is nothing in the world that could have prepared me to expect even half of that. Watching movies with small children is an experience. Like Tiny Human, you have no sense of story progression, which is to say, we put on the first How to Train Your Dragon, and at the dramatic first fight scene, 2-year-old shouted, "Him fall!" and started sobbing. She straight up thought that movie had murdered Hiccup and Toothless halfway through. Had to get double parental hugs and a constant stream of reassurances until they figured their whole flying thing out. All movies could be horror movies if your brain hasn't equipped plot armor to the protagonist. Anyway, 5-year-old is pleased to report that he liked the part where the big dragon exploded. I don't love that every time a famous artist turns out to be a friggin' disgusting piece of trash loser evil crap stain, that everyone always scrambles to say, well, their art was always mid and bad anyway. Like, dude, just reckon with the fact you can't judge someone's moral fiber based on the art they make, or the clothes they wear, or the way they speak, or friggin' anything at all. I genuinely really liked Lost Prophet's music before it came out that the lead singer was a predator, and I also still enjoy some Kevin Spacey acting roles like The Negotiator and Outbreak. Cognitive dissonance and discomfort intolerance are hard to cope with, believe me, I know, but holding opposing viewpoints, e.g. this person has caused harm to some people and this person has brought joy to other people, and finding nuance in the space between is an important skill to practice. Saw someone post, "I don't understand why anyone would have separate winter tires unless they're just looking for things to spend money on," and looked at her account and she's from LA, which is funny, but I think we're all guilty of similar behavior sometimes. If you see people spending time and effort on something that seems stupid to you, it's worth considering whether you're the Californian in this scenario. I didn't know they made separate winter tires either. I don't think I would have thought it was extravagant. Doesn't sound like a bougie thing, but anyways, are they just better on ice or something? Yeah, they're better on ice and snow, but they also generally get better grip so you can brake more effectively, so it's also useful when the streets are wet or you need to brake more efficiently. They're made of a different kind of rubber than summer tires and not as ideal for warm temperatures, which is why you change them. I saw some weird conspiracy video thing today of like, we were never meant to have access to yeast that was cultivated in a lab and it harms us, bullcrap. And I was like, well, first off, there's no such thing as meant to, and second of all, the long history of acquiring yeast from beer foam stretching so far back, you can acquire yeast from the air. If you want to make sourdough starter from scratch, the process is mix water, flour, and maybe sugar if you've got it, then whip in as much air as you can and let it sit. And this works because there's yeast there in the air. How casual Star Trek fans think James T. Kirk is. How James T. Kirk actually is. How casual Star Trek fans think Jean-Luc Picard is. How Jean-Luc Picard actually is. James T. Kirk graduated in the top 4% of his year, was bullied by jocks, is a history nerd, was so much of a teacher's pet that he cheated on an exam and was commended for it, was referred to as a stack of books with legs. Jean-Luc Picard spent all his free time drinking in pubs and playing billiards, broke more hearts than he can remember, started a bar fight that ended up in him being stabbed in the heart, likes to explore dangerous ruins of ancient civilizations for fun, wouldn't even have become a starship captain if he wasn't this much of a hothead, and yet people still managed to get it backwards? This year, my music got 96,000 streams on Spotify and had 46,000 listeners, and I made $185.61 total. This is indefensible, truly an evil company. I totally get why people enjoy using Spotify, but if you want to support musicians, please consider buying our stuff on Bandcamp once in a while. Since it's Spotify rap season, I thought I'd share this reminder that streaming services are killing the music industry. Musicians can't make a living like this. If you love an artist, find them on Bandcamp and actually buy their albums. The Japanese microforest method is transforming cities. With more than 85% of the global population living in urban areas, microforests in cities offer an essential opportunity to combat deforestation. The Miyawaki forest technique, invented by Japanese botanist and plant ecology expert Professor Akira Miyawaki in the 1970s, is the inspiration for microforests worldwide. These diverse organic small forests can be created on sites as small as 9 square meters and only use native species that would otherwise grow naturally in the planting area. They grow up to 10 times faster than monoculture forests in just 2 to 3 decades. Netflix bought HBO and Warner Bros. It's so over. Not only is my TV experience gonna be ruined, but get ready for films to be in theaters for much smaller windows before being put on streaming. Just take me out back and shoot me. When asked if Netflix is destroying Hollywood, co-CEO Ted Sarandos said, "No, we're saving Hollywood. We're in a period of transition. Folks grew up thinking, I want to make movies on a gigantic screen and have strangers watch them, and to have them play in the theater for 2 months and people cry and sold out shows. It's an outdated concept." The thing about Bugs Bunny is that he lives and dies by his bits. He's fully capable of killing you if he wanted, but the thing is, not only is he a nice guy, he's a funny guy. To beat Bugs Bunny, many people assume that you just have to not fall for the jokes. If he hits you with a pie, you don't flinch, and eventually you'll wear him down. The issue is, misery will only last you so long. There's only so much bits to endure before it becomes funny, and whoever is getting laughed at is losing. Instead, to kill Bugs Bunny, you have to beat him at his own game. When he throws a pie, don't try to sidestep or be a sourpuss. That's playing into his hands. Instead, you comically open your mouth and swallow it whole. This is how you kill a god. Eldritch horror beyond your comprehension, and it's just a generic monster with tentacles and eyes. Girl, I'm comprehending you pretty easily. You're gonna have to try harder than that. In my D&D setting, the most eldritch of creatures is an ape that is impossibly wide. Whatever room you're in, this ape is wider than that. Imagine the widest room you can imagine. This ape is wider. Its other proportions remain the same. His name is Wide Ape. Everyone go home. We got a winner. People will insist humans are naturally selfish when feeding the birds is a common hobby, when there are wildlife hospitals you can call when you find an injured fox outside. Do we get anything from helping wild animals? I don't think so. It's not personal, it's just nice. It's something we have the resources to do, so we do it. It's selfish because I want bird more than bread. Not that complicated. Now explain how you fit people who throw themselves on a grenade to save other people into a descriptive egoist framework without stretching the concept of self-interest beyond the breaking point and rendering it meaningless. I.e., no, oh, well, they want those other people to be alive more than they want to be alive. That's obviously prioritizing other people's needs over one's own, and redefining self-interest to be just a thing someone wants. The human body is an engineering marvel. I sneeze in bright light. If I don't get enough sunlight on my skin, I get tired and sad and have to drink a lot of milk to fix it. Standing too much hurts, but sitting too much also hurts. If I get a virus, my body will increase its temperature in an attempt to cook it, which also cooks my brain cells. Toenails exist. I have to turn the radio down to see better when I drive. There are 17 genes dictating what my hair texture is, but it completely changes when the air is too humid. Yawning is contagious. There are more species of bacteria living in my body than there are species of birds in the entire world. Every few months, I grievously injure my neck by sleeping on it weird. It took 7 million years of human evolution to form me, and now I'm afraid of phone calls. Historically, people had servants. Incorrect. Historically, people were servants, and many of us still are. I feel like people try to explain how historical figure had all the time to do so many great accomplishments, and thus go, it's because they had servants, which is true, but then leave it at that, rather than continue on to the more important point that the servants actually often were as tired and overworked and unable to have time for themselves as so many of us are. People lived this way because they had servants. Okay, and how were the servants living? Sometime in 1906, I was walking in the heat of the day through the bazaars. As I passed an Arab cafe, an idle wit, and no hostility to my straw hat, but desiring to shine before his friends, called out in Arabic, "God curse your father, O Englishman!" I was young then and quicker-tempered, and foolishly could not refrain from answering in his own language that I would also curse his father if he were in a position to inform me which of his mother's 92 admirers his father had been. I heard footsteps behind me and slightly picked up the pace, angry with myself for committing the sin of a row with Egyptians. In a few seconds, I felt a hand on each arm. "My brother!" said the original humorist. "Return, I pray you, and drink with us coffee and smoke. I didn't think that your worship knew Arabic, still less the correct Arabic abuse, and we would fain benefit further by your important thoughts." Hot dogs were a ceremonial meal often consumed during the observation of a divination ritual sometimes known as baseball in a period known of the late American Empire. People love to make fun of archaeologists for how often we say objects were used ritualistically, as if we overuse that designation, or just say it when we don't know what something was used for. But that's only because people don't stop to think how full of ritual all of our lives are. The meme is actually correct for the most part. Hot dogs are ritually consumed during baseball games. Lots of people only eat hot dogs if they're watching baseball. The expectation for us to eat turkey on Thanksgiving is another example of us ritually consuming food. Drinking coffee every morning is another ritual we do. Going to the gym several days a week is a ritual. Ritual doesn't necessarily mean religious. I don't know who has to hear this today, but sometimes the devil doesn't need an advocate. Sometimes the devil is already winning. Saying this as a recovered devil's advocate, by the way. That hag didn't need my help. He just wanted the exposure. Do people actually not know what playing devil's advocate is supposed to be for? It's not that thing trolls do where they play both sides to frig with people, or any other deception tactic. Devil's advocate is when you make an argument you strictly do not agree with, and everyone present is supposed to know that's what you're doing, because it's like a roleplay training session. You imagine what you'd say if you were your enemy, in order to brainstorm the counterpoints you would make against all of those points. A debate team agrees to do this as a mental exercise. It's not meant to just be sprung on people. It's really weird having a first dog be blind and then getting a second who can see. Like, how was I supposed to be prepared for this? This creature can perceive when I put the treats up on the high shelf or when I hide stuff behind my back. I can't fool her. She's always watching me and she shouldn't have this much knowledge. I walk around at night and I shine my flashlight directly into her eyes, and I'll just be standing there staring at her weird blue orbs for like 5 seconds until I realize it's probably extremely annoying to her because she has eyes. I'll turn on the light in the room and she gruffs and grumbles like, huh? Oh right, light wakes you up. The frig? Unpopular opinion, but we should treat someone's sobriety with the seriousness of someone who has an allergy. Your sober friends do not want to taste, they do not find it funny when you bring unlabeled food with alcohol in it, and they should be made aware when events will center around alcohol so they can make educated decisions about their well-being. Sometimes, one of my friends posts an angry response to some terrible opinion I've never heard before, and it's a weird indirect way to learn how awful their other friends must be. I mean, they did also don't respect allergies. That is a pretty significant thing that happens. Like, I understand where you're coming from here, but they very much do not respect allergies. Bumped into my neighbor who told me about how when she was mowing, she found a praying mantis, and while pointing it out to another neighbor, ran into a group of 4 men and also asked if they wanted to see, and they enthusiastically agree. So she takes them to see it and notices that these men are almost giddy over this bug. So she starts asking questions, and turns out they're from various African countries, are scientists traveling on some sort of research grant, and one of them in particular is a specialist in insects. They were all just on their way to their Airbnb. Like, imagine you arrive in this foreign country to study its local bugs. You get off the plane and start walking where you're staying, and some old lady stops you and is all, hey, come look at our local bug. OP posts on r/mildly infuriating that the condo they bought was an illegal substance den and paid coitus hub. It's revealed in the comments that it was simply owned by a single woman who smoked Zaza. Average Tumblr user. The majority of bedrooms sold have had people having coitus in it. Oh, that's gross. I'm gonna stay in a hotel instead. I've heard some people have coitus there too. I'm gonna stay in the alley behind the Wendy's instead. You're not gonna believe me when I tell you this. That's it. I'm going to hide in an airplane bathroom. Ugh. I got some bad news for you, friend. I think I'll just stay at my parents' house. I love that the insane crap people say about blue sky is like true. You'd think people are being hyperbolic when they're like, you could see it was a little cloudy out this morning, and someone you've never seen before would quote you with a caps-heavy reply about how Trump's mind is clouded and he must be impeached. But no, there are thousands of users who are actually like that. After 10 years, I think I may retire the old Blue Yeti and look into something new. Does anyone have any good microphone suggestions? USB is preferred, but I can be convinced to finally switch to XLR if someone ride or dies for it. I was thinking about one of those Elgato mics for a long while. I don't know what the hell a Blue Yeti is, but we have an orange one that we regretfully made president. I'm pretty sure most of us are sick and tired of him. Feel free to take him home. I love when Star Trek throws an incredibly traumatic backstory at one of their characters, and then we just never mention it in any other episodes ever again. Like, yeah, Kirk went through a mass killing and famine crisis when he was a child. Well, anyways, let's talk about something else now. I think this happened so notably in the original Trek, because in the 1960s, a huge portion of the population were about 20 years removed from a colossal trauma. So yeah, going to the theater for a bit of Shakespeare and your buddy has a sudden flashback to some wartime horror he's never mentioned and never will again probably feels a little more normal. Never ever trust anyone who uses listen as a synonym for obey. By the time I was 6, I'd recognized how parents and teachers love to say listen to me when they mean do what I want, and I knew I hated it. It betrays an insufferably entitled belief that the only reason someone might not be doing what you want them to is that they haven't properly received your instructions, that they couldn't possibly have the agency to hear and understand and then decide differently. By age 8, I had started to retort with, I'm listening, I just decided not to do it, which my dad, anti-establishment academic, loved, and my mom, a cop and always accept literal, hated. Homeschooling should be completely illegal, IMO, but at the very least, we need a national standard of testing and check-ins with mandatory reporters. The HLSDA will send you threats if you try, though. Her office was flooded with angry phone calls from all over the country. According to a copy provided by the senator's office, it said that she had made a fatal mistake and that she wouldn't see her next birthday. The annoying homeschooled adults in the notes arguing that, yeah, okay, some homeschool kids might be horrifically abused, denied a basic education, and therefore making it nigh impossible to seek higher levels of education, isolated, and in the worst circumstances don't even survive. But I think I turned out fine, and as the main character of the universe, I think my individual experience should hold more weight. Men will say, hear me out, and show you the most conventionally attractive woman you've ever seen. Meanwhile, women will say, hear me out, and show you this thing. In what world is tall, muscular man not conventionally attractive? We've all been down here too long. I truly think there's a chunk of Tumblr's population that can no longer survive sunlight. Women will say, hear me out, and show you a photo of Pyramid Head. And then Tumblr users will go, this is a perfectly normal man and an ice cold take. Why is it a problem if students use AI to get through college? Because if you demonstrate to me that you're willing to set aside concern for truth, evidence, and verifying things with your own eyes whenever it happens to be inconvenient for you, I have a solemn responsibility to make sure you don't get into medical school. Oh, but this course is just a distribution requirement. It's not for my major. Does saying things that are true and that you know are true only matter when someone is giving you a little prize for it? I don't want to live in a world in which doctors and lawyers and politicians just ignore the responsibility to research and verify when it's inconvenient for them, when they're busy, when they have something they'd rather be doing. The world I live in is already too full of those people in positions of power. I'll be damned if I let there be more of them. Crazy how the printer is the only piece of tech that acts up like that almost every day of its life, and we just accept it. I met a printer early in my IT career that did not want to be a printer. It sat in a school reprographics room, sullenly chewing any job it was fed, if it deigned to notice them at all. Then one day, a miracle occurred. An exhausted physics teacher, instead of punching in 12 for the number of copies she wanted of the 30-page booklet she had made for her A-level physics class, punched in 1,200, and that printer came to life. This print job was its moment, its magnum opus. It would not be parted from it, no matter what we did, until we physically unplugged it from the wall, by which time it had printed almost 200 copies. No way I just saw people in TikTok comments crying, screaming, throwing up at the idea of Aslan being a Jesus figure. Worsties, the lion literally dies to save Edmund, the sinner, and then rises from the dead. He tells the Pevensies he can be found under a different name in our world. What else could this have meant? Tolkien versus Lewis, allegories. Professor Tolkien, is it true that you wrote your novels as an allegory for the First World War? No, never. Ask me that again and I'll call the police. If even one person reading this does not understand that the big lion is Jesus, I will set myself on fire. Entry-level jobs haven't existed since the 2008 crash. 90% of hiring managers won't hire recent graduates. A quarter of job listings are ghost jobs. Companies hire part-time so that they don't have to give benefits. Federal minimum wage hasn't increased since 2009. The true unemployment rate is 25%. Masters are the new bachelors. For most, the job search takes over a year. 75% of resumes are never actually seen by the hiring team. I have a suggestion. Me too. Grinch. Noun. A grumpy person who spoils the pleasure of others. When Dr. Seuss wrote How the Grinch Stole Christmas in 1957, he probably had no idea that Grinch would soon enter the general lexicon of English. The first known use of the meaning defined above was in 1966. The first known use of crink was in 2019. I almost scrolled past this on Twitter. Me telling my story how I survived a plane crash and lived on a deserted island for a year. It was crazy. Friend who once got a text from me where I accidentally called the Grinch the Grink. Was the Grink there? The sandwich gender spectrum post has escaped containment again, and reading the responses at this point is almost as fascinating as the original fieldwork that provided the data. It's very hard for some people to grasp, even on Tumblr, that sandwiches have no inherent gender. Liking a specific sandwich does not gender you in any meaningful way. Loudly rejecting a sandwich because it would portray you as too effeminate or masculine, or demanding a sandwich as a way of asserting your gender identity, that is what I'm discussing, not the sandwich itself. A man eating a veggie wrap doesn't impact my data because that's actually very normal. Men performatively rejecting a veggie wrap as too feminine is what the post is about. Extremely funny to me that Kermit the Frog is the only main overlap character between Sesame Street and the Muppets. Imagine your day job is hanging out in a community of lovely people that genuinely just want to help kids learn and care about everyone so much. And then your night job is the reason that you have to stay up to date on your rabies and tetanus vaccine. At noon, the giant you're hanging out with is Big Bird, a wonderful fellow who likes reading stories and singing and telling fun facts. At midnight, there's a giant named Sweetums who makes you feel like you're being hunted for sport. When I was younger, I thought the black market was a physical place in the middle of a desert canyon somewhere, and the reason it was called that was because all the stalls used black fabric. I thought that human bones and brains and jars were sold there. I thought you could buy smuggled artifacts and stolen artwork from painters long dead. I thought that you could buy elephant ivory and endangered bird eggs. I thought that you could buy rhinoceros meat and wild chinchilla coats. I thought you could buy pirated copies of movies and hard drives full of government secrets. I kind of wanted to go, but I knew it was a terrible thing to ask. I wouldn't have bought anything. I would have just liked the look. Has anyone figured out how to turn off the thing where you love your pet so much it slides inexorably into grief borrowing? Yes, actually. There's a Buddhist story about a tea set, but I'll skip that. When you're aware of the impermanence of things, instead of holding on to your attachment, which is irrational, you know it'll end, so fighting that awareness is a losing battle and you're making yourself suffer. Go with the flow. My beautiful cat will die someday, so I should make sure right now that we're having a great time and it's loved and cherished. So when the time comes, I'll feel proud and relieved that I gave it the life it deserved. And that will be a beautiful victory. Visiting my boyfriend is like he cooks an elaborate meal for 5 hours and I bring this little chair into the kitchen and drink my gin and tonic he made for me and just sit on my phone and don't help. Why are people mad at this? This is the ideal setup for people who are intense about cooking but like company. As a kitchen dweller, this is 100% my preferred configuration. Big cooking sessions are a Venn diagram that makes a circle of do not enter my cooking space and please hang out and talk with me. Also, this is sort of similar to shotgun duties in a car. On a long kitchen trip, kitchen chair should be in charge of music and be available for things such as can you hand me that towel, and oh, thanks for refilling my drink, and of course, watching out for cops. I cannot emphasize how much it sucks that people in movies don't look real anymore. Like, conventionally attractive people have always been cast more as leads, but up until like a decade ago, they had visible age lines and textured skin and double chins and imperfect teeth. Like, whenever I'm feeling insecure, I just have to watch a regular movie from the 70s and remind myself that I'm actually not unhygienic and disgusting for having teeth that are a little yellow and visible pores. Genuinely, social media has frigged everything up, and we need to realize that the average person is normal, and you are in fact allowed to make art and exist in the public eye while not looking like an airbrushed 20-year-old, and that your personal appearance really doesn't matter that much. Pink Mountaineers acts from Muromachi period, 14th century Japan. Since ancient times in Japan, the heart symbol has been called Inome, meaning the eye of a wild boar, and it has the meaning of warding off evil spirits. The decorations are used to decorate Shinto shrines, Buddhist temples, castles, and weapons. The oldest examples of this pattern are seen in some of the Japanese original suba, sword guard of the style called Torangata suba, literally inverted egg-shaped suba, that were attached to swords from the 6th to 7th centuries, and part of the suba was hollowed out in the shape of a heart symbol, in case you were wondering why there was a heart symbol on a 14th century weapon. Advice I think we should tell children is that when adults say stuff like, now that I'm an adult, I get really excited about stuff like coffee tables and bathrooms and rugs, etc. They don't mean, and now I don't care about Blorbo and Squimbus from my childhood TV shows anymore, because your average adult still loves all the same pop culture stuff they always did. They just have a greater appreciation for the mundane as well. Growing up just means you can enjoy life twice as much now. You can get really excited about a new stuffed animal and about a new kitchen sponge. Peace and love. You get bigger so you can store even more love and appreciation for the world inside of you. My mom has severe knee problems and needs a replacement. Today she was told she's too fat to be operated on, and the knee specialist suggested she gets a gastric band, which also involves surgery. So my mom was like, first of all, you didn't read my file because it explains that I'm not fat because I eat too much. Second of all, you said it's impossible for me to get surgery and then suggested I get a surgery about it? He then asked her weight and height, didn't believe her answer, and made her prove it to him because she looks fatter than that. So she was like, so you also just entirely based this on looks instead of actual numbers? Me, watching a battle scene. Please not the horses. Leave them alone. They did nothing wrong. They're the only innocent ones. They don't deserve this. Honestly, this used to upset me a lot as a kid, until my mom, who's worked with horses for many years, told me about how they train the horses in those movies to do things like falling down, kneeling, crawling, or stay laying on the ground after they fall, and how it's so tough to train a prey animal to do these behaviors, and how hard both the trainer and horse have to work. So now, whenever I see a horse take a hit and go down in a movie, I just think, friggin' superb, you funky little horse actor. This is one of those true declassified government things that always sounds made up, but one of the things Henry Kissinger did with his career was use the CIA to help turn small, prosperous socialist nations into fascist dictatorships just to keep those nations powerless and possibly to keep socialist systems looking doomed and futile to the American public. Like maybe just to scare Americans out of demanding better infrastructure or universal income. Yes, it sounds like an insane conspiracy theory a maniac would invent. It also happened multiple times, and several generations of people around the world are still living in misery because of it. What's the weirdest thing about American culture? Every 20 years or so, they declassify a file that says, you're right, we did it, what are you gonna do about it? One time, in a French history class, my teacher randomly at the end of the class had all of us draw a sketch of a horse, and we were all like, huh? Okay? At the beginning of the next class, my teacher showed us a cave painting of a horse, and then he showed all of our horses, which he had scanned and put into the presentation. He then pointed out all the ways that our horses look similar to the prehistoric horse, same features, drawn from the same angle, etc. And then he asked us, isn't it cool that you draw horses the same way as someone who lived 20,000 years ago? Yeah, that stuck with me for a while. Super World, Super Mario World except without Mario, a simple simulation treating Mario levels as ecosystems in which plants and creatures, Goombas, Koopas, live and die. Found this buried in an old Game Ideas TXT file and I was cooking, I think. Nudging seeds around to crossbreed plants and evolve various kinds of power-up mushrooms and piranha plants. Cheap aquaculture. Subject, take down notice for enclosed URLs. Dear Orteal, we represent Nintendo of America Inc. in intellectual property matters. Certain material posted on the webpage located at tumblr.com/Orteal42 infringes copyrights owned by Nintendo. Sheesh, man, alright. Meet the men paying 6 figures to get taller by having their legs broken. A few months ago, I flew out to Las Vegas to report a story about the boom of rich guys who secretly got leg lengthening surgery during COVID. Now they're re-entering the world 3 to 6 inches taller, and mostly not telling anyone, lol. Huh? Height is a choice. Several people are typing. Literally insane. These guys can fly to Vegas and get their legs broken on a whim, but if I want a gender-affirming surgery, I need multiple psych letters. Cis people are the #1 consumers of gender-affirming treatments, etc., etc. I'm always thinking about that news story where a 3-year-old boy who wandered away from his house and ended up in the middle of the woods was found by this local Great Pyrenees farm dog who herded the kid back to his unrelated owner's house, and the guy was like, whose kid is this? That dog must have been like, this isn't a goat. Some human must have left their puppy behind by accident. I have to bring this to management. Surely my owner will be able to sort out whatever has occurred. That kid was like, I'm all alone and scared, and oh my god, a big fluffy puppy is here to help. And that friggin' farmer looking at his dog like, whose toddler did you steal? Me, the most autistic woman alive. Why is the silence so loud right now? And then you track down the one odd electronic device that is on. I know it's here somewhere. I can feel you. Every holistic person I've met has been like, what the frig do you mean you can hear electricity? They just don't get it. They don't get how loud everything is. I found the device this afternoon. It was a Christmas lights timer attached to an extension cord, both of which had fallen behind a cabinet and thus been rendered totally invisible, unplugged with prejudice. If birds had language as nuanced and complex as people do, urban birds would definitely have arguments about baby strollers. They'd look at people going around with them and think, damn, they've got nests that can just move around. Wouldn't that be so convenient? And then some other one would go, yeah, sure, but they walk everywhere. How would you make a nest you could fly with? And then keep arguing. Someone is pretty sure that since the wheelie push portable nests only ever have human hatchlings in them, then surely they carry eggs some other way, probably in those backpacks. The other birds agree that this is a stupid idea. They all disagree on why it can't be like that, but they all agree that humans don't carry eggs around. So I was talking to my grandmother about old school video games, and she was all, there was one game I used to play, and it had like a maze, and it was underground, and there was a guy in first person, and he had a weapon. So knowing her penchant for puzzle games, I started guessing like Myst, or Legend of Grimrock. So we started hunting through these 90s era games featuring dungeon crawls. Turns out, it wasn't a puzzle game. It was nothing close to a puzzle game. Apparently, in the mid-90s, my grandmother would sit down and play friggin' Wolfenstein 3D and listen to AC/DC for like hours on end. So, my family has a gay pirate plate. We do not know how the hell the gay pirate plate was first acquired. This being a point of contention is actually pretty plot relevant. The saga of the gay pirate plate began with my grandmother and her sister, who for some ungodly reason both badly wanted the gay pirate plate and believed it to be rightfully theirs. The gay pirate plate is the cheapest, tackiest, ugliest plate in existence. It is in no way a collector's item. It is physically impossible for it to complement anyone's decor because the colors in it are garish. It's just a ceramic plate with a gay pirate painted on it, and the painting is, this cannot be emphasized enough, extremely bad. Wow, plate be upon ye. How are these people real? What do you like about the truck?
What I love about the truck is just how it's so polarizing.
And are you married?
I was married, but I'm not married anymore. Women don't like the vehicle.
In July, Tesla rolled out a software update to integrate Grok into many of its vehicles. Do you use it?
Her name is Aura, and I use her as a therapist. When I'm driving, I'll ask questions, and it actually gives really good therapy advice.
I thought it was satire. It's not satire! It's the first page article in the January issue of Wired. I'm sorry. There should be a thing such as a medical detective. You should be able to hire a doctor to figure out what the frig is going on with you come hell or high water by consulting whatever specialist they can get their hands on, connecting your constellation of symptoms, etc. Instead of 10,000 different doctors for every distinct bone in your body that all just kind of go, dang, that sucks, I don't know, when you present with more than one freaking symptom. That was Dr. House, and he committed over 55 malpractice per hour. Yeah, and his patients got cured. My doctors committed malpractice, and I'm not better. Green sea turtle no longer endangered. These gentle 400-pound giants are splashing back from the brink of extinction. I'm happy to say that green sea turtles no longer being counted as endangered is not due to the IUCN or any government shifting the goalposts for what can be considered an endangered species. The only update is, as the article states, an update in surveyed population numbers. Notably, the article itself states the current green sea turtle numbers are not currently what they historically were when the species was thriving, but this change in status over a relatively short period should absolutely be considered a significant win for conservation efforts and indicates a larger, more grounded hope in our ocean ecosystem's ability to heal. Hashtag breaking. Several churches are now adopting AI-powered chatbots that let members interact with an AI version of Jesus, encouraging them to confess their sins, ask spiritual questions, and seek help for personal issues. That's like mega turbo heresy. Archaeology gains prominence in the 19th century. The cult of Mormonism springs forth from pseudo-archaeology. Psychology gains prominence in the 20th century. The cult of Scientology springs forth from pseudo-psychology. Machine learning gains prominence in the 21st century. You are here. I think about this cake every day. I had to get a cake for my brother's graduation. The employee came out with this. He didn't even seem embarrassed. He just looked so tired. He offered to try again, but I said that it was perfect. Couldn't have asked for a better cake for my brother. Even my grandma thought it was funny. The cashier thought I was crazy, but I was too busy crying. I mean, look at it. How many letters? Congratulations. I don't know how to spell congratulations either, man. I get it. Sorry for exposing your tags, but this is hilarious. I don't know if this is a boomer take, but I think people should make more of an effort to go see movies in theaters, because I couldn't bear it if the movie theater industry went down and the only way to watch movies was through streaming. I'm not strong enough. Actually, I'll make it even more boomer, because I genuinely think it's a good thing for people to have a reason to put down social media for an hour or two and just focus all their attention on a movie together and get fully immersed. Like, I think that's good practice for our attention spans and ultimately for our mental health. Unless you're a person who uses your phone during the movie in the theater, in which case, I don't know, die. I honestly think Gen Z and younger simply doesn't understand how recent widespread smartphone adoption is. I'm not that old, and I didn't have a smartphone until probably late high school. For most of my life, many if not most people were not walking around with a magic internet machine in their pocket that they pulled out and used constantly for everything. Do you remember having to ration your text messages and accidentally opening the internet on your phone was the end of the world? I got a phone in my senior year of high school, and only because I'd almost gotten kidnapped, so it was a precaution. It came with like 30 minutes of use per month. Also, a pickup truck ran over it once and it was fine afterward. It was a pain in the butt though. You had to charge it at least once a week. J.J. Abrams acknowledges it probably would have been better if they'd approached the Star Wars sequel trilogy with a plan. This reminds me of those dudes running Game of Thrones who had virtually no experience and were allowed to just treat a multi-million-dollar franchise as their little frig around and learn about TV sandbox. Why are people with no credentials allowed to get away with this over and over again while the rest of us have to fight tooth and nail for literal crumbs? I friggin' hate the entertainment industry. The face when you realize you put more thought into your self-indulgent fanfic in middle school than someone in charge of a multi-million-dollar franchise that employs thousands of people and is watched by millions. When I turned 17, we ordered a cake at the grocery store for my party, as we'd done many times before. If you wanted something written on the cake, you'd write it into a section of the order form. We requested very simply, "Happy birthday, Courtney." When we went to pick it up the day of the party, this is what we got. The bakery employees had absolutely no explanation for this. The order form, attached to the box, very clearly did not contain any of those extra names. Whomever had done the writing was no longer in, so there was no one to ask how this had happened. The fact that the name Juan is misspelled bewilders me to this day. I've never seen Miley without the E either, but it's believable that someone might spell it that way. Did this cake slip in from an alternate universe where I'm 1/4 of a set of Hispanic quadruplets? Dyslexic Hispanic quadruplets, maybe? My mom needed a knee replacement and her doctor wouldn't okay it until she lost weight, which was difficult given the whole knee problem preventing her from walking thing. He told her she was too dangerous to operate on and that there were just too many risks. My mom tried to lose weight in vain for months before she finally gave in to my begging her to get a second opinion. The first doctor she saw next scheduled her for surgery the same day she met him. When my mom asked about the risk of operating on her, he told her that there were some minor risks for complications and that all she would need to do to alleviate the risk was spend an extra night in the hospital so that they could keep a lookout for any complications. There were zero. There were also zero complications when she had her other knee done, her hip replaced, and her gallbladder removed. Not pertinent to anything in particular, but I do think it's kind of weird that we keep depicting cavemen in media crawling around on all fours covered in dirt with tangled matted hair, speaking in broken cobbled together toddler language when, like, they were us. Like, literally genetically they were us just like a while ago. Like, would you trust a TV caveman with a baby? Probably not. A real life caveman though? I think they'd be at least okay at it. There's much evidence that cavemen would have had complex spoken language, culture, learned information passed down, symbolic interpretation, and I think they most certainly would have been able to handle holding a baby. In fact, I have my suspicions that an ancient Homo sapiens mother may be a more present, attentive, and knowledgeable mom than I could be today. I'm not a will help, no questions asked kind of friend, because I will ask questions. I'm just not gonna question your answers. Like, yeah, if we're friends, I can help you get rid of a body, no problem. But I still want to know who it was and what happened. Not because I don't trust that you'd kill someone who didn't need killing, or would help someone you shouldn't be helping. We wouldn't be friends in the first place if I didn't know you well enough to trust your judgment. I'm just curious as hell, and I want to know things. I love how this implies you chose your friends by their ability to kill the right people. Some of you are mentally unwell because your reusable water bottle is filled with black mold. Go wash that crap. Use a straw cleaner. Look at me. Use a straw cleaner. You need to. Hi, I was drinking mold all my freshman year and got the most sick I've ever been in my life. Here's a good way to avoid that crap. Number one rule is get stainless steel crap. Stainless steel water bottle, stainless steel straw. You don't want that rubber, plastic, etc. crap. It grows mold like a mother frigger. Turns out that was the main culprit of what happened to me. My reusable water bottle was plastic, and it didn't matter how much I let it soak or cleaned it out. One of the most profound experiences of my life was visiting Fond de Goum, which has 12,000-year-old paintings. They use a technique where the horses appear to run across the wall when seen in flickering firelight. There was a bison on the wall staring at us with such attitude I could practically hear him. I had the most profound feeling of those ancient artists reaching forward to lay their hands on my shoulders, to say this was my world. It was a profoundly moving experience. Some years later, I went to the Orkney Islands, where we visited a tiny family-run museum of artifacts from the chamber tomb at the other end of the farm. They handed me a pestle once held by some Neolithic human. They'd worn gloves where the thumb and forefinger would be for a better grip. He can't keep getting away with this! It's been 0 days since another release of Skyrim. Sorry to everyone who found out this way. I too thought this was a joke. Well, here we are again, folks. Merry Christmas. Happy Holidays. Release, November 11th, 2011. Release 2, October 28th, 2016. Release 3, November 17th, 2017. Release 4, November 11th, 2021. Release 5, December 9th, 2025. Did it work? Did the machine work? What year is it? Anyone? What year? New release, Skyrim. What year is it? I was searching for some pretty Hanukkah gifs to schedule a post tomorrow wishing my Jewish followers happy Hanukkah, and I found a fit/shape/bodybuilding site that posted this, and I thought to myself, I simply must show my Jewish followers fit menorah man. Muscle Tov, I'm screaming. This was not how I planned to wish my Jewish followers happy Hanukkah, but with that said, I must share these additions to the post. Reblog for 8 nights of gains. It's him, Maccabee. Happy first night of Hanukkah, my friends. As a 19-year-old sophomore at Stanford, Elizabeth Holmes decided to transform diagnostic medicine, so she dropped out of college and used her tuition money to start her own company, Theranos. 10 years later, Holmes, pictured here holding a microvial, is on the cutting edge of medical technology. Her new blood testing method allows hundreds of tests to be run using only a few drops of blood, and Holmes' methods are cheaper, faster, more accurate, and less invasive than conventional methods, which often require a separate vial of blood for every test. This is like an entry found in an old computer in a Fallout game. All these people are like, wow, I want a big lady to step on me. But where is the love for short girl stepping on you? Short girl intimidating you with her presence and body language alone until you fall over and she steps on you. Short girl taking down someone who's much taller than her and making them submit. Where's the love for my Shadow of the Colossus girlies? Where's the love for girls like this? OP, this is a very hot concept and your post is valid, but did you have to explain this with a gif from Penguins of Madagascar? This is the Conservapedia page for gender confusion. Gender confused people love degenerate liberal culture, especially depraved video games, such as Ultra Kill, an extremely violent satanic shooter, Fallout New Vegas, an anti-American, Fallout series makes fun of 1950s American culture, pro-SJW RPG, and Celeste, a platformer which gives gender confused people unrealistic power fantasies, such as the ability to double jump, which they do not naturally possess. Who else lying in bed sleepless and delusional with the power fantasy of double jumping? My partner suddenly decided they didn't like the food I cooked and stopped eating it. Okay, let them starve. I say this as an autistic person with sensory issues surrounding food. If your grown adult partner refuses to eat a dish you and your kids enjoy, they can make themselves a PB&J. Growing up as a picky eater, the rule was try it, and if you don't like it, make something else. And it perplexes me that this is a foreign concept to grown adults. It's more about the learned helplessness these grown adults display. Being a picky eater, whatever. I get it. Refusing to feed feed yourself? Friggin' ridiculous. If you don't like what your partner cooked because it's too spicy or there's too texture or whatever, don't make it their problem. Don't make them feel bad about it. Feed yourself. It never failed on our early trips. Someone would notice that one of our group was MIA. It was always Bruce McCandless. He was an avid bird watcher and would stray from the group to observe a bird of interest. So Ed decided to appoint a Bruce watcher on each of our subsequent field trips. It's ironic that the first person NASA allowed to be completely free, untethered, and on his own in space, with a man-maneuvering unit strapped to his back, was Bruce. Hilariously funny that they let the guy known for wandering off without warning to look at birds was allowed to do this. Famously few birds in space. Probably the safest place to take them. Microsoft scales back AI goals because almost nobody is using Copilot. Google's Gemini is on pace to push Copilot into third place. Microsoft has cut its sales targets for its agentic AI software after struggling to find buyers interested in using it. In some cases, targets have been slashed by up to 50%, suggesting Microsoft overestimated the potential of its new AI tools. Indeed, compared with ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, Copilot is falling behind, raising concerns about Microsoft's substantial AI investment. Microsoft was an early investor in many of the latest AI companies. It ended up with a serious stake in OpenAI and benefited from early access to its models, creating Bing Chat and Copilot when Google, Meta, and Anthropic were just getting started. But now its momentum is stalled, and like everyone else, it's not making much money from its AI products. That's because no one is buying them, and that is because very few people actually find them useful. Every time I think about what the New York Times did to Susan Doku, I get a bit enraged inside. In case you don't know, Susan Doku, inventor of popular number puzzle game Sudoku, was outed as a lesbian by the New York Times in 2003. Many have speculated this was done more or less to slander her to the public, so their attempted purchase of exclusive printing rights for the game could be done at a much lower price. She actually lost a lawsuit against the Times, as was not deemed libelous, given she was in a civil partnership with her now wife, Christina Chris Ward. Susan also lays claim to the first recorded use of the word polyamorous in her 1994 essay 81 Squares. The problem with being kind of unashamedly a weird guy is that it's still kind of hurtful when people treat you like you're weird. Like, yeah man, I know you perceive me as very eccentric and an iconoclast, but if you're constantly reacting to me like I've grown 2 heads and said something totally insane every time I open my mouth, I'm not gonna feel especially welcomed in your life, you know? I don't feel shame over my weirdness, but for some reason, other people decide to feel it for me. I'm reading The Genius of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman, and today I learned that the first ever documented case of a bird making a tool to use as a weapon against another bird was a stellar jay's breaking off and sharpening a stick to wield like a lance at a crow that was taking too long at a feeding station the jay also wanted to eat at. The jay tried to stab at the crow, but narrowly missed. The crow lunged back, the jay dropped the stick, and the crow picked it up with the sharp end pointing towards the jay and pursued it into the trees. Imagine the guy in front of you at McDonald's is taking too long to order, and so you fashion a blade on the spot and hold him at knife point, and then he steals your knife and points it back at you while chasing you out of the restaurant. And also, the guy is twice your size. A few days ago, a coworker asked me to explain Hanukkah, and I asked her if she knew what a menorah was. She said, like the Northern Lights? I'm simultaneously haunted by and wild about this concept now. Instead of Aurora Borealis, Menorah Borealis. Menorah Borealis. Is it just me, or is anyone else seeing something that isn't a candle right now? I'm not Jewish, but now I'm also captivated by the concept of a Menorah Borealis, and I didn't see anyone else drawing it. Hope you like it and hope everyone who celebrates has a lovely Hanukkah. I legitimately think Christmas music should be regulated. Actually, I think all radio music should be regulated for the sake of employees everywhere, and I'm not joking. There should be designated stations that play the top 10 over and over for people driving short distances, and designated stations that cannot play the same song more than twice in a 24-hour period for people working in retail and fast food. And it should be a punishable labor violation for any manager to play a top 10 station for more than an hour in the workplace. Why do you keep calling things you find beautiful, inexplicable, and unsettling angels? I'm just doing what British wartime radar technicians did first. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, from 1947 the term angels was commonly used to describe unexplainable echoes seen not only on radar pictures in Britain, but across the world. However, the solution to the radar angel mystery was not found until the 1950s. Although highly seasonal, they were not directly related to the weather. The flights of angels coincided exactly with flocks of small migrating birds returning to Britain. It was birds, by the way. Angel. Reading bad media takes online will never compare to the exquisite torture that is trying to have a conversation about basic literary analysis with your own family members, discussing media with people online. Can you please put down the Greek mythology for a second and actually read the text in front of you? Discussing media with your parents. Lady behind me at the thing screening last night to her partner, "Why are they shooting at the dog?" And her partner says very firmly, "Have you never seen a film before? You watch it and information is revealed." Smelled nice and tasted a bit sweet. Large seed inside. I think it might be ackee fruit? Unsure. Update. Turns out it's the world's deadliest fruit. Whoops! My tongue and throat are numb, but I'll live. I only licked it and didn't swallow. You licked a manchineal fruit? Do not do this. I looked it up and it's literally called the death apple / tree of death. Oh yeah, the tree that kills you. A friggin' manchineal? For those unaware, this is the tree that's so toxic that you can't even sit under it during rain because the runoff from the leaves will corrode your flesh. I think some of you don't like narratives or stories or characters. I think you just like fanfiction tropes. Protagonists can and will be prejudiced, insensitive, cruel, stupid, etc., especially towards the beginning of a story. These are called character flaws, and they're a surprise tool that will lead to narrative fulfillment later. And sometimes narrative fulfillment doesn't mean the character overcomes their flaws, or even the anti-hero is punished for their flaws. Sometimes it means the narrative says, "Wow, was that frigged up or what?" Anyway, I'm Rod Sterling. Did you guys see people think Taylor Swift is the New England serial killer? Human remains found near Taylor Swift's Rhode Island mansion amid fears of a New England serial killer. I lived around what they're calling the serial killer's active area last year, and this year they found like 15 bodies. I think she did it. Do you think Taylor is the killer? She definitely is. Girl's gone on a murderous rampage of music. No, I don't. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Taylor Swift is the killer. She has that song that's like, "I'm the problem, it's me." Maybe she's talking about all the killings. Shake It Up could be about shaking all the bones up in a bag. Nice mechanical watches are wasted on wealthy men. A billionaire who will wear it once every 4 years and leave it in a case the rest of the time doesn't deserve a marvel of engineering like that. I deserve a watch like that because I get bricked up by clockwork. Joke's on you. I have a mechanical watch with transparent windows, which means I can see it ticking, and the watch, is just as hot as you think. You really are out of your league here on all counts. Look up the V&A Altair Deep Space Resonance and understand my suffering. Oh dear God, you are right. I need that watch in a freaky way. Oh. Honestly, the impact of frustration is seriously underestimated. Like, as an emotion, I think it's not seen as intense as anger or despair, or even joy or excitement, and yet being frustrated is the quickest route to meltdown, for me at least. There's something about how it's just got nowhere to go that makes it so overwhelming and unpleasant, and it gives you just contradictory responses to the situation. Do you keep trying? Do you get angry? Do you cry and get upset? Do you throw up? Like what? My teachers called frustration a mild term for anger and helplessness combined. Those are not minor feelings on their own. I'm not sure why people speak as though they soften each other when it's more of a Coke and Mentos situation. Wait, Twitter really is so much better when you block everyone who even just slightly annoys you. I just want everyone to have the peace that I have. Blocked accounts, 428,698. You have like the size of a small city blocked. To be clear, this person has blocked the equivalent of the entire population of Minneapolis, plus an extra 119 folks. This person's block list would be the 46th largest city in the United States. Not criticizing, I'm just impressed. Curating their internet experience for real. Secret bars called speakeasies proliferated. To demonstrate Americans' widespread disrespect for prohibition, federal agent Izzy Einstein timed how long it took him to find alcohol in most major cities. It took him 21 minutes in Chicago and only 31 seconds in New Orleans when he asked a taxi driver where he could get a drink, and the man replied, "Right here," as he pulled out a bottle. This is in my history book about prohibition in the 1920s, and I'm laughing so hard. Oh my God. Einstein didn't even have time to look up from his watch. So my mom's been clearing out her mom's house in order to sell it and has been gifting me a lot of random odds and ends from it. Cut crystal jewelry, rose-scented soaps, a Brita pitcher, etc. But she also just emptied that house's entire spice cabinet and just dumped it all in a box and brought it to me to pick through, because I do a lot of cooking / baking, and people listen. Most of it was 5, 10, even 20 years past its expiration date, but nothing could have prepared me for this one tiny tin of white pepper. 1989, are you friggin' kidding me? Not to put too fine a point on it, but this pepper has been expired almost as long as I've been alive. I was 2 when this pepper went bad. As a smoker, one of the fastest ways I dissuade people from smoking is, I go, you know how your headaches suck? Imagine a permanent headache that slowly gets more and more expensive to cure, and also you can't stop coughing in the middle of all this. Yeah? This sucks. People keep bringing up things that are terminal, and I need you to understand something critical here. People do not conceptualize what they've not experienced properly, and the inconvenient side effects come faster, and are far more likely than the big scary ones. Don't start cocoa because your liver will fail. Means nothing to me. Have never experienced liver failure. Also, it takes forever for me to get to that stage. Do you want to know what cocoa craps are? Paying attention. Do not alter my crap habits. I love that a lion with an eagle's head and wings is such a well-known mythical beast, but apparently the English language can only agree on a grand total of 3 out of 7 letters in its name. Regex that automatch most spelling variations of this mythical beast's name. I write it as either Griffin or Griffin, but Gruffon, Griffon, Grippen sounds like the plain Grippin Lamau, Gruffin and others would be enlightened spellings. Hey guys, not what you know what? Okay, I'll take it. I don't give a crap if straight actors play LGBT characters as long as they do so with empathy and authenticity. When you say crap like only LGBT actors should play LGBT characters, what you're actually saying is only out LGBT actors should play LGBT characters. You're also saying that you, as an audience member, are entitled to private and intimate details of actors' personal lives, for what it's worth. If you ever read any interview with Tim Curry, he's always very clear about finding this absurd. We all pretty much assume Tim Curry is LGBT, but we'll never know, because he has absolutely point-blank refused to discuss his dating life with the public or the media, because it's nobody's business but his. Got a new lighter. It's shaped like a fish and it blinds you. It had a huge sticker on it that said, "This is not a toy." The gas station I got it from had a sign in front of the display for these only that said, "Buy first, then test." The first time you strike it, from the fins, by the way, you find out exactly why. They have added incredibly bright, flashing blue LED lights on the eyes, which point directly into your eyes and the eyes of whoever is looking anywhere close to the fish that makes you blind. Who thought this was a good idea? This isn't what I normally post here, but Firefox just switched CEOs and this Anthony idiot is trying to put more AI slopware into it, meaning more bloat and privacy loss. Mozilla's new CEO is doubling down on an AI future for Firefox. Anthony Enzor DeMeo says he thinks there's room for another browser, even an AI browser, as long as you can trust it. Hello, we're Firefox, the only browser that hasn't hit itself in the Richard with a hammer. For years now, folks use us because of our unhammered Richard. Now, you may be wondering why today we've brought this hammer and pulled out our Richard. Well, I'm glad you asked. The Roadrunner cannot harm the coyote except by going beep beep. No outside force can harm the coyote, only his own ineptitude or the failure of the Acme products. The coyote could stop any time, if he weren't a fanatic. Repeat, a fanatic is one who redoubles his effort when he has forgotten his aim. George Santayana. No dialogue ever except beep beep. The Roadrunner must stay on the road. Otherwise, logically, he wouldn't be called Roadrunner. All action must be confined to the natural environment of the two characters, the Southwest American desert. All materials, tools, weapons, or mechanical conveniences must be obtained from the Acme Corporation. Whenever possible, make gravity the coyote's greatest enemy. The coyote is always more humiliated than harmed by his failures. I would like to share the story of a very understandable but unfortunate mistake I made at work recently. So I'm reading our ancient and terrible collection of children's books for the first time in possibly ever, and I'm making a decision about a book about migrant workers by Sandra Weiner called Small Hands, Big Hands, and I'm not 100% sure, and I go to just see if there's anything out there about this book being notable in any way. So I do an open web search for Small Hands, Big Hands Weiner, and then I look at my results for a moment, and then at last I somberly add to the end of my search, book. Chuck Jones is the best counterexample to "the curtains are just blue," because you would not believe the amount of thought and art theory he put into his silly little cartoons. One time, he was talking about the Wile E. Coyote gag, where he runs off a cliff and continues running for a little bit before noticing there's no ground underneath him, and then turns to the camera and holds up a sign saying "help" before plummeting. And Jones said the reason Coyote does that instead of immediately trying to get back to the cliff edge is because Coyote embodies anxiety, and in that particular moment, represents the fear and worry about the judgment of others over and above the desire for self-preservation. Like, if somebody was told that interpretation without knowing any better, they'd think it came from some pretentious academic or whatever, but nope, it's literally the creator. Like, those are the thoughts he had in his head when he was creating the cartoons. No, but genuinely, the trivialization of anxiety disorders is horrific. I'm not gonna write a whole post, I've done so much writing today, but, like, man, I get paranoia so bad, I can't eat. I can't have conversation with strangers I perceive as authority figures half the time because I physically can't speak at an audible volume. It has a serious negative impact on my day-to-day life. But anxiety disorders are always viewed as, like, mild mental illnesses. People don't talk about the fact that anxiety can be legitimately disabling, and I don't know, it's not as stigmatized as some things, but it really isn't taken seriously, and that results in a similar lack of support. PSA, Tumblr user Little Friggin' Monster is stealing human bones from cemeteries in Louisiana. Please don't let them get away with this and spread the word / signal boost. This was real. Little Friggin' Monster was actually stealing bones from cemeteries. She is the bone stealing witch. She was specifically stealing bones from poor people. She was arrested for it. Not only did the user in question get arrested, but 4 months later, the state legislature passed the Louisiana Human Remains Protection and Control Act, created specifically because people heard about this case and realized there weren't any clear laws about who has what right to own human remains and who enforces those rights. In today's linguistics class, we talked about metaphors, and we really want 2 of the ones we talked about to become conventionalized. So first of all, this one girl told us about a newer metaphor in Russian, I have pause, which is something you say when you don't really want to do something, so you say you're incapable of doing it since you have paws instead of hands. Like, hey, finish that report. But I have paws. And I think that's adorable. It's like, I'm just a girl, but for animals. We also had the task to invent a novel metaphor and have the others guess what it means. And the teacher really liked my, she's such a capybara, equals everyone loves her. Capybara energy is like golden retriever energy, except you're chill about it. You're just vibing and everyone digs that. Hi, a lot of you need a perspective reset. The average human lifespan globally is 70 plus years. Taking the threshold of adulthood as 18, you're likely to spend at least 52 years as a fully grown adult. At the age of 30, you've lived less than 1/4 of your adult life, 12 out of 52 years. Middle age is typically considered to be between 45 and 65. It is extremely common to switch careers, start new relationships, emigrate, go to college for the first or second time, or make other life-changing decisions in middle age. It's wild that I even have to spell it out, but older adults 60 plus still have social lives and hobbies and interests. Young doesn't mean peaked. You're inexperienced in your 20s. You're still learning and practicing. I'm not traditionally a conspiracy theorist, but there is no way in hell's black earth that Dubai chocolate bullcrap wasn't some kind of psyop. That crap was goddamn everywhere. Viral shill influencer equivalent of the bubonic plague. And now there's $20 bars at my grocery store? My child, it is pistachios in chocolate. Dubai chocolate is regime propaganda. The viral pistachio-filled candy bar is everywhere, but there's nothing sweet about the United Arab Emirates. I don't like being correct. The scale of J.K. Rowling's power is an anomaly in all of the history of professional writers. Neil Gaiman is an exceptionally rich outlier by writer standards because of his work in TV and film, and he has an estimated net worth of 10 million. Stephen King is even more of an outlier, with an estimated net worth of 500 million. Rowling, currently as I'm writing this, has an estimated net worth of 1.2 billion. Billion with a B. She is the wealthiest author in all of history, not just currently, of all time. This woman is a political force. She is heavily influential even outside of her own country. Neil Gaiman is a piece of crap, but after his crimes came to light, he stopped tweeting. He doesn't have the political power to do what she's doing. Very, very few people do. I usually try to be tolerant of anachronisms in books, particularly ye old medieval generic swords and sorcery type books, but I think I broke the sound barrier with how quickly I just shot out of my immersion in this book when ye old ancient archivist in ye old fantasy England castle's library tells the protag where to find a certain book by giving him its Dewey Decimal Number. Today, in an Arthurian retelling set in pre-Saxon Britain, I encountered a character who said he was going to quit drinking cold turkey, which I think puts him roughly 1,000 years prior to European awareness of the existence of turkeys, and the dissonance had barely registered in my mind before I remembered the medieval lending library run on the Dewey Decimal System and decided a chronologically misplaced poultry idiom wasn't worth noticing in comparison. Testosterone promotes cuddling, not just aggression, animal study finds. Testosterone can foster friendly, pro-social behavior in males. A new animal study conducted by Emory University finds. There are a lot of really important statements here to be made about releasing the learned and inaccurate fear that testosterone makes/will make you dangerous, and how the reality is that it's an important, complex, mood and body regulating hormone, because there's almost nothing in your body that only has one singular function. You're a system. None of your parts exist in isolation. The less important observation to be made here is, I'm gonna be so good at hugging. Being 30 is fun. I was discussing anime with the teen at work and asked her how much of Boku no Hero she'd watched. She had trouble answering and wasn't sure how to approach it. I said, better question was, who was your husbando? And she turned bright red before mumbling an answer. They never expect me to know how deep their love of anime boys runs. One time, she said she used to be into BL, and another employee down the hall asked what BL was, and I yelled back, it's gay smut, which reduced the teen to yelling, it's fan service, fan service. So I yelled back, it's gay smut fan service. Anyway, I get why dads are like that now. There's a common perception that writing male characters, then gender flipping them, only results in you writing one type of woman, who is basically a guy. But I feel like that attitude only makes sense if you assume that all men are a certain way to begin with. If doing that only results in you writing stereotypical tomboys, then I think maybe you also struggle with writing men. The point of the exercise is that our culture treats manhood as the baseline and femininity as a modifier to that baseline. Men get to be characters, women get to be characters. The exercise thus lets you write women who are now characters from the start. Early 21st century Americans were so modest that they would regularly censor their own feed in video and artistic depictions. It was considered improper to expose your feet in public, dismissed with cries of, put those grippers away! I know this is a bit, but I consider people censoring their feet to be part of America's rising conservatism and fear of coitus. The fact that wearing shoes in public, and even still with socks in a more private social setting, is part of our modesty culture. Now, I'm not saying I'm desperate to see your grippers, but I am saying that we've made the feet a taboo body part within my lifetime. He would not friggin' say that, is when people have senshi hate on fast food or pizza, because senshi is full ya, fed is better. Just do your best type of person, and he'd love fast food. Man spends a day making candy and ice cream for everyone, and then at the end is like, dang, really should have planned more well-rounded meals. Ah well, let's fix that. He wouldn't complain about someone knocking back half a pizza or having a big soda and greasy burger. He'd explain how it's cool to eat like that, as long as you try and make sure to keep yourself rounded and not neglect the food groups. The young must be fed. Senshi is watching an event coordinator give a bunch of kids a juice box and some sliced fruit after running around outside for 3 hours, and demand to know where they're supposed to get their fat, proteins, etc. to keep having fun. Adults every generation, when the children that were born 10 years ago don't know what was going on 15 years ago. My 10-year-old doesn't know what CDs are. Have you told her what a CD is? Do you use CDs? Has she ever seen one? Then how the frig is she going to know what a CD is? Are you friggin' stupid? I'm going to kill you. My son tried to introduce me to Green Day's music after finding it on YouTube. He knew about Green Day for one day and immediately told you about it, but you let that young boy reach puberty without telling him about the best worst pop punk band of all time. I'm on his side. Audiences have no idea how to be uncomfortable anymore. Watch movies that make you uncomfortable, read books that make you uncomfortable, go to plays that make you uncomfortable, watch TV that makes you uncomfortable, look at paintings and sculptures and artwork that makes you uncomfortable. It is spiritually and morally and ethically and artistically really, really good for you. Think about why you're uncomfortable. What biases do you bring to art? What biases does the art bring to you? How do you reconcile this? How does your worldview grow and expand and change? All this and more will be answered and available to you if you just engage with art that doesn't coddle you and treats you like an intelligent human being that can sit through discomfort. When my brothers and I were growing up, once a year we'd go on a week-long road trip once a summer, and every single time we'd go the same place and stop at the same museums, and the three of us who were obsessed with history and architecture would do one thing, and the rest of us who were obsessed with natural history and animal facts would do another, and then we'd pile back into the car to listen to the same 2 CDs of My Chemical Romance or Red Hot Chili Peppers on a loop while playing the Animal Game, which is a game where everyone has to guess what animal you're thinking of by asking only yes or no questions and narrowing it down by phylum and habitat and crap, and then we pull in at a crappy motel where we'd put on either Shark Week, Mythbusters, or the Fireplace channel, the latter of which we would watch together in dead silence, only to cheer when the hand appeared to toss a new log on. So in hindsight, there were signs we were on the spectrum. My least favorite thing about anti-UBI discourse is always the tech bros whining that
nobody's gonna work anymore. People will just watch Netflix all day.
Field studies have been conducted in several countries now, and the result is always the same. People will just flop about for a couple months to recover from the burnout most people who have a job live with, and then they look for something to do. Some get a job with reduced hours, and some start doing charitable stuff like volunteering in soup kitchens and teaching others to do whatever their particular skill is. They socialize more, they're happier, and on average, people will work more, not less. The problem with the whole listen to your body thing is my body is always telling me it's a great time to get cozy in bed, except critically at bedtime. Cravings and urges get miscoded over time. Let's say you're thirsty and you live in a strawberry field. Strawberries contain some water and a bunch of sugar, so over time, you may start to crave strawberries when you're thirsty, because you get a reward and some relief in shorter time from the need starting than the trek to the stream. This can happen for every need, sleep, food, whatever. Trevor Noah has a great tip, that when he craves ice cream at night, he breaks it down into parts. I want something cold, I want something sweet. He drinks a glass of cold water, then waits to see if he still has the ice cream craving. Usually he doesn't. Wizard 101 temporarily offline after disgruntled employee fills it with vulgarities. In September 2022, a disgruntled employee posted inappropriate hacked messages to Wizard 101 servers for all to see. The Wizard police are after me. Kings Isle claims the person who sent out the hacked messages was actually not an employee. Wizard 101 memberships are free to all for the rest of September 2022 as compensation for this event. Lots of people have let me know that I forgot to add one of the funniest parts of all of this. The person with rogue access has been dealt with and will be taken care of. Frig you! I still have it. If any part of your plan involves the words, "Nobody could be that stupid," please be prepared to be proven wrong at any minute at a moment's notice. Pay in mind that the person determined to prove you wrong may already be aware of this assumption and is already approaching your current location at an alarming speed. It'll be fine if people will not just. If users regularly frig up using a tool you made and your answer is, you're holding it wrong, the next question you should ask is, why did I make this tool so it's easy to hold it wrong? A new cat color has been spotted in Finland. This is really interesting. A lot of common cat coat patterns have only evolved in the last 1,000 years. The tabby cat coloration only evolved in the Middle Ages. They're calling it salty licorice because of its visual similarity to the popular Finnish sweet. It reminds me of blue tick coloring in dogs, or the blue roan coloring in horses and cows. I love when a cat is posing for a photo documenting it. Bro, you are a specimen and you have no idea.